All right, we're live.
I think we're the
Nice. It's so funny, every single time either a podcast or a live or anything like that starts, it's always hearing like, "Oh, we're live." All right, so
yeah.
so it's always here. All right, so you wanna say a little bit about what we're doing here?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about the one man, the one and only fraud. Um,
The fraud, Sigmund the fraud.
Sigmund the fraud. Yes, so we're talking about some psychoanalysis, if you know what I mean. Getting to know how people think and act and whether they know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. So well, uh, I I'm going to guess that the only people that will ever see this is me and you. So to tell me and you of the future what we were thinking here. Um, we were thinking of starting to use some of the more vacuous spaces of time that we have
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
more advantageously. So we were thinking that, well, I asked Gavin, like, what is a topic that you like generally interest yourself in, and that we could find a book on, and then we could start reading, and then we could start discussing. And then, well, we talked about that yesterday, I think, and so we did that. I read a chapter. Gabin's read three,
Yes,
and
I was procrastinating to the fullest and then not and just read the entire Bible of Sigmund Freud
yeah,
until I doze off. Sort
yeah.
of
So
happened.
yeah. No, so yeah, and then it evolved into me getting the idea of, well, if you're going to formulate your ideas, then you might as well formulate your ideas under some pressure. And it's cool to see what you thought before, to see the evolution of your thought process. Reading books is smart, and even better, when you read books, to put it into action and to actually speak about what you've learned will, well, it will make it more memorable, and you'll actually learn it physically, not just through memorization of what's right and wrong.
Yeah, and sort of we were discussing different topics that might interest me, and we got to the conclusion that I had no idea what I wanted to do. There was no topic left.
Which is usually the case for everyone. We never
Yeah.
know what we want to do.
And then it came to mind like, man, it would be really cool if you could like get to know what people think because I get no information out of any conversation. It's just being there. And then what
Yeah,
better way of just listening to a conversation that than just diving right into their brain? It felt
yeah,
rational. And so here we are. Sigmund Freud, the very liked man. No criticism towards him whatsoever in the past couple of decades, centuries even.
yeah. He's quite controversial, though I can't claim to say that I know exactly why. But I think he's of the kind that is quite disagreeable, and he's a little bit like me, I'd say, in the way that he represents a barrier for disagreement with his ideas. He sort of blocks them from that. So he's probably highly self critical of his ideas as well, and very scared of being wrong. I think that's the case because in the introduction of this book, I think it's called Introductory Lectures on Psychoanalysis, he
Yes.
begins with ladies and gentlemen, and he speaks about the knowledge of the people that he's lecturing for. And it makes it, it seems to me, I have this idea that the people he's speaking to are medical students. Would that be right?
It does sound like that. And
Yeah.
actually, he starts speaking so gentle, like gentlemanly, just ladies and
Mm-hmm.
gentlemen, and speaking like he's actually rationalizing, rationalizing,
Rationalizing.
yeah, rationalizing that word with them. And he almost deceived me. I thought he was a good person for once. I almost got deceived.
What do you mean rationalizing with them?
Well, at least through first and second chapter, he makes a lot of questions that he answers himself, but he asks from the audience point of view, like, okay, and now
Yeah,
I know you're going to debate me on this, but wait a
yeah.
second, this is for the betterment of the topic we have at hand. And he
Hmm.
responds to his own question, but what everybody was thinking probably at that time. And he further emphasizes on this when in the third chapter. You have no idea what he talks about in the third chapter, but he just starts doing a Q&A. Didn't know that was a thing back in the day.
Oh,
Yeah, I thought
that's
people
interesting.
didn't talk.
Yeah, like the ladies and gentlemen, that's sort of I mean today that would be like some sarcasm involved generally when you say that. If you say it in the way that it's written here, like caps and slowly said, like ladies and gentlemen, and then you start talking about what they are thinking and stuff and their knowledge. I mean that's not going to be taken so well, specifically among med students, I'd say. I don't know, because people tend to hold their education quite dear to them, and the education becomes sort of, or the educatory means, or the place of educatory means becomes sort of a cult residence where the people that are at the top know everything about everything because they have a high degree within one thing, which is actually what tends to happen within like martial arts and stuff as well. Like you have a really good fight coach and you come to him at the end. Like people ask him for like love life advice and everything. This actually recently happened to me and Gabin with this Polish person. We won't say the name. It came to us for advice, and this ties well into the thing that made us choose the topic. Like, or one of the things that made it difficult to choose a topic was we didn't really know what we wanted to learn about, and at the same time, this
Let's call him Bob.
yeah, this Bob character. So, and that you speak to people that you feel know one thing very well about everything as if they're experts. Because this person came to me with a love life inquiry and was like, well, da 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 da. Someone is, well, my significant other has said that we're taking a break, etc. And he was asking us for advice on that. And I was thinking while we were, because we gave advice, uh, to the best
To
of
the
our
best of our
abilities.
abilities, yeah.
Yeah, and we said that well, we're not really gurus on this, and that struck me as interesting that someone would like to hear the ideas of someone just barely older with probably not that much more knowledge, just because of one conversation we'd had prior where we delved into a bunch of the difficulties with some of the ideas that he had and then changed his mind on some topics, which is never the goal, by the way. You shouldn't aim to change someone's mind. You should aim to listen when you're not talking and to talk when you're listening, or
Well, you
talk when
would
you're not listening.
rather say that you're not pursuing to change his mind, but you do pursue being a person that irradiates all of this confidence in other people, that you talk with so much decision that they view your ideas as close to the truth. You
Mm.
of course need to remind them that you're no god, you're a mere human.
Yeah,
At some points it's kind of hard if you're too
that's
good at
strange.
one certain topic, but well, rather what I wanted to point out was um, coming back to the ladies and gentlemen, because I think it's a very recognizable part of the book. It's said every chapter,
Oh, it's
and
reoccurring.
yeah, a reoccurring thing.
Mm-hmm.
And what you said about lecture in our days, if someone, well, a teacher said, "Ladies and gentlemen," you'd think he was from another age. Like
Yeah,
he's not from
it's
this
quite
era.
an archaic thing to say.
But this is the fact for Sigmund Freud. He's actually from another era.
Yeah, yeah.
And
it's hard to say.
Even though he's from another era, and well, some of his beliefs may have been improved through research in this topic, most of his ideas prevail, and I think that's a cool thing to relinquish and to try to make this sort of impact on the future.
That's impressive, 115 years later, after the writing of this book, most of the ideas are quite congruent with what we believe today. Now, if you were to do that within a lot of other things, like let's say science in general, a lot of the things are kept, but it's definitely harder to find a person that was that right. Okay, so the people that were right that long ago are basically on the same level as Freud, right?
Yeah.
So we have like Einstein, let's say, like incredible mind.
Well, even Plato, even though many of his ideas may be starting to get old
Yeah,
at this point, but
archaic.
How many years ago did he live? Like, maybe dinosaurs were still roaming the earth at that point.
No, okay, so the thing I think allows for that, the fact that you can write something down, and it will, well, the knowledge that you have now will be useful in the future, is if there's two preconditions for that. You have to, one, use the information that you can absolutely confirm through means that cannot be changed to view reality, at least prospectively. And secondly, you have to be absolutely honest about what you know, and what you know you don't know, and what you don't know.
Yeah, we all know the phrase. I know that I don't know nothing. Yeah, sorry. Go on.
So when Plato speaks, I think one of the reasons all these philosophers are so remembered, well, not most of them aren't remembered, but a lot of them are, is because, well, they spoke the truth, and they admitted when they didn't know anything, and they called other people out when they said they knew things that they didn't know. And so honesty travels quite far, even though we say that a lie can travel around the earth by the time that the truth has gotten out and put in its shoes on, something like that. I think that's not true when it comes to the longer game, because a lie gets revealed to be fake over time and testing, because all ideas are tested.
Even national secrets do have an expiring date, and
which is crazy.
It made all of this very confusing thing about Area 51 holding aliens and so on.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm. No, so okay, we have basically. Oh, and I hope we notice this great setup made by Gavin here. The goggles and the lady with the great hair.
A true image of research.
Mm-hmm.
And where we're going.
I hope that this image would resemble something like, well, you see the Eiffel Tower in the background and some other buildings that look like they're from somewhere else. So I'd like to view it as her hair is sort of the brain matter interacting with the outside world while we adventure through the intellectual world, trying to find a good place of residence. And the goggles, the reason we're placed there is because, well, everything is seen through our perspective. But the perspective is also changing based on, well, what we see. Which is a strange thing, because what you see is impacted by your perspective. But if you see enough of something that sort of makes your perspective questionable, then your perspective will actually change based on what you see through the perspective. At least that's an idea. I don't know.
Yeah, no, so I think you've learned so much from one chapter of psychoanalysis. You're psychoanalyzing an image probably generated by an AI that will take over in the following 5 years, 10. Oh, yeah. We don't know when, but it's coming. I wonder if AI will ever become able to philosophize, or will it think it's not useful enough and will devise different science branches?
I mean, we play with kids, right? And it's sometimes to our own amusement. So I don't know if and we do make silly jokes, and jokes are quite complex. And so I think, well, if there is such a thing as the power of stories and jokes and stuff like this, because there has to be an underlying narrative that you subvert at the end after a pattern has been set for a joke to be truly effective,
Mm-hmm.
well, then they would have to, well, maybe their jokes would be something like philosophy.
Well, and it would have something to do with their own nature, since jokes pull forward what is, well, what we think is funny. It's actually, or was true at some point.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
even like racism, as bad as it can be, has its own grounds on biology and the difference between us.
Yeah,
It's
well,
just,
okay, so when you see a shadow in your room at home alone, and you like jump and you get really scared for a second, and then you realize like it's your cat walking in or something, you can think to yourself, "Wow, that's hilarious," right? And the same can happen if you have discriminatory modes of thought or modes of perception, right? Where if you were to see a yellow elephant running at you at max speed, and then it turns out that it's just a yellow car driving by, right? The same thing is when you see a threat in, let's say, a race, or if you see a person approaching you and you see it as this great danger, because we don't necessarily see things through. And I think we spoke about this yesterday. You don't see a thing and think of the thing and what it does and the history of it or the name or who's done what with it. You think what you can do about it or with the object. And
yeah.
so
You put
they've studied
the
in the brain.
example yesterday about the handle, and that you don't imagine a handle. You imagine yourself opening the door.
Yeah, yeah. Which is crazy because that means when you see a door handle, you don't think of a door handle. You think of a door.
Well,
And the
yeah,
same
that would
thing with
be, yeah,
if you grab a stick, the human nerve system is so tool based in its deepest sense that you will your nerves will sort of replicate, and I don't say you'll feel the tip of the stick, right? But your body will instantly adopt the perception of the stick being part of you. And the same happens when you're in a plane, a car, a boat, any of that. And that's why you can gain such control and reflexes based on things like cars about to hit your car. It's not the fear of dying, it's actually the fact that you think you are the car, which I think is which is funny because we think that, well, in essence it's wrong, but in usefulness it's amazing.
yeah. I imagined myself driving my car, a full SUV with bad suspensions and driving, and so I think I'm overweight whenever I make a turn. It's like,
Yeah.
damn, this is so hard. I wish I
Yeah,
made the car gym.
car gym. What would car gym be? Well, anyways, okay. So we've noted down some points that we're going to discuss because we've been thinking that we'll read this book and we'll read books as well and try to expand our knowledge, the tree of knowledge, without the apples, and see if it's possible to discuss what's in the book and then use the other books and then use general knowledge outside of that and studies, and in the end hopefully we'll have gotten better at talking, conveying information, learning, and also gotten smarter. So that's the goal.
Or actually, it's just a part of the bigger goal, right? What some say to be the God given imperative of thriving
Oh,
and forwarding your generation into the next one.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so you have to become smart to have smart kids, or to have the chance at least, and to make society a better place. You know, we all say, yes, let's make this country great again, etc., etc. And the only way is by individual action and betterment. Since we can't control the whole body, we can
Yeah.
control the limb. And so, yeah, it's just part of, I mean, friendship is an agreement between people to thrive together. You don't become friends with someone to just get trashed. Although, if you're a student, you might not understand this concept. But but actually, you're just trading knowledge with other people and wanting to become better and making them become better in exchange. That's the agreement we make with our relatives and our close friends, and of course, with our significant other.
It's a beautiful idea, you know, because if you view that through one of the quotes by Dostoevsky, where he says something that most people, when they first hear it, think is outrageous. He says, "You are responsible for everything that happens to you and everything that happens." Oh no, sorry, I what is it called? Paraphrased him there. So no, what he says is, "You're responsible for everything that you do." That's not too hard to get around. Some people think that's difficult. But he continues by saying, "and what everyone else does." And so viewing that quote in that light is something you could rephrase it slightly into something like, well, relations are, well, genuine relations are pacts or agreements of trying to make the world a better place.
Yeah,
Because
it
one thing
always.
becoming better affects and seeps into everything else getting better in some way. And if everything does that, well, then everything's become, well, something approximating infinitely better.
I mean, when Dostoevsky says that statement, like you have to believe him. You have to believe him. Believe him. Oh my god, because you see his life and where he ended up, and he still says, "Yes, this is because of me. I, I'm accountable for all of that's happened to me." And nobody, no normal person in our century would say, "Oh yes, it's his fault that he went to prison by just voting the communist regime." Yeah, that's his fault. Ha, he gets what he ought to, right? I mean, if someone that had a normal life said it, you wouldn't believe him. You said, "Oh, what a cool idea." But when this man says it, it has power because he carries it through action.
Yeah, yeah. And through unbelievable action as well, as you said.
It's almost like a his hero satirical story.
Yeah, he writes it in what has been, by many academics and intellectual thinkers, thought of to be one of the greatest books like ever, The Brothers Karamazov. I've pulled up the quote here before we start going into some points that we've written down that we're going to talk about. So the quote is, "There's only one way to salvation, and that is to make yourself responsible for all men's sins. As soon as you make yourself responsible in all sincerity for everything and for everyone, you will see at once that this is really so, and that you are in fact to blame for everyone and for all things." Fyodor Dostoevsky. The cool thing there is in the first quote, and I'll try not to stay too long on this because that was very interesting. He says, "There's only one way to salvation," that's in the religious sense, "and that is to make yourself responsible for all men's sins." Now, if we speak religiously, we actually have one case in religious mythology and history and narratively in a story where one man actually does this.
That would
I don't know
have
if
to be Jesus, right?
Yes.
Okay,
So
I was thinking maybe it was Michael Jackson or some other rock star. Yes.
responsible for all medicines. Yeah, no, so I think it's true what he says, like that's the only way to salvation. Because, well, no, that is the only one way to salvation. Which is a scary idea because that means, well, if you're anything less than Jesus, then salvation is out of your reach.
Well, that's a cool idea. I'm not very sure how deep into theology or Christian theology that holds. Maybe it's a topic for another time,
Yeah.
but it's
So,
nonetheless a very interesting concept that Dostoevsky carries out into our
he was a
minds.
deep religious thinker, I think. So, the
Here we
number
go.
one point, and these aren't really questions, these are just things. The first one here that was noted from the first chapter, just called Lecture 1 Introduction, where he says that he uses a bunch of time to explain that psychoanalysis cannot be observed by a third party. Because it's sort of like, hmm, I want to see what fire and ice does, but I'll also stuff my face in it to be able to see it.
Repeat that again. I could. It's a complex phrase. Couldn't get it in
So,
my mind.
yeah. No, I just started the conversation badly, as I usually say. So, no, I mean, psychoanalysis cannot be observed by a third party is one thing that he claims, and well, I think that's analogous to I want to see what fire and ice does, but I'll also stuff my face in the mix to be able to see it. Because the addition of another consciousness in the proximity of the procedure causes there to be, well, is in and of itself an element that affects the other elements. And so it becomes a different procedure because psychoanalysis is quite the difficult thing to
Oh yeah,
achieve.
he talks about how, well, first of all, a psychologist is not really curing the patient on his own, unlike some more common practices, like a doctor, but rather is only carrying the tools for the patient to heal himself. And so, whatever makes the patient close in or not be able to say something that would be criticized in society because someone else is hearing it, it it's for the detriment of the healing process.
That's cool to think about. The thing you said in the first there that, well, you're not performing an operation on someone. That's what you said, right?
Yeah,
You're just,
carrying out the tools for the other person to operate on themselves.
yeah. So it's something like we have a collective toolbox that we can delve into, and if we go deep enough, we can find. Sometimes we can find a good tool, and other times we figure out that we don't need one at all. So maybe we are all the tools needed to improve each other, you know? Because
Yeah,
sometimes your problems are so deeply rooted that the world would need to become a better place. And sometimes people don't see that, well, you could actually start that by, like, well, to say it in a Jordan Petersonistic way, make your bed, let's say, or clean your room.
yeah,
And, maybe you're more positive that day. Maybe you prove to yourself that you can do something, and then that manifests itself in your behavior towards others, and then that is spreading itself like a wildfire. And if everyone does that, well, then we have a conflagration of, well, good, hopefully.
yeah. I was thinking about an example of this idea, and it is that
Okay.
normal people, well, it is also said in the book, I'm just going to paraphrase,
Mm-hmm.
but many of the ideas that make up the psychoanalysis process are criticized when it's uh, uh, actually psychoanalysis, taking action, but
Hmm.
otherwise are very common ideas that people have just used for centuries. So I think we have the tools in front of us, and we see the tool, and we don't know what it is. We just look at it. It's cool, I guess, but how do I use it? And so the psychoanalyst or the psychologist just shows us, okay, this is a wrench. You turn it, you get out the bolts, you can start working on yourself.
You can use that to kill someone. You can also use that to fix your washing machine. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you can find the other sock.
Yeah, maybe you can find the other sock. You know, the missing part of you that is needed. God damn, that's the deepest wrench theory I've ever heard.
Maybe I am next psychoanalyst going out in the news.
Yeah, yeah. Did you find any other examples though? You said you were looking for other examples.
Um, yeah, I was looking for examples and I got this one. But also, well, on this topic, um, yeah, no, I'm completely blank-minded. I think that's just the best explanation I've given. I can't top it off.
So, are there any other situations where something can't be observed because then it's, well, maligned with the goal?
Well, certainly psychologists can't talk openly about and not divorce, but like unfaithfulness when the wife is looking or the husband is looking. I mean, there's no healing process to be made at that point, but still, it won't be carried out nevertheless if someone else is indulging into it.
Oh, you mean like within psychoanalysis? Well, I mean like in general, any situation that when it's when you
Oh,
give
when
a
you,
viewer,
yeah,
it's harder to well, it won't happen basically if you observe it.
well, the
Is this
closest
something
example I
like the
have,
notion of faith?
the motion of faith.
The notion of faith.
Oh, yeah, true. That is another one. I was thinking the closest one that I can give is quantum mechanics.
Yeah, I went the other way. Like you went
You
as
know,
far into science as possible, and I went as
normally
far into.
I would be the faithful one, but I've been proven wrong. I mean, maybe you can
Okay.
carry my example and I can carry yours.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, okay, I have to go get my food now. So, is it possible to pause the recording?
Yes.
Okay, do that. All
So we're
right.
back.
Yeah. And so the last thing that was said is something about the notion of faith. Now, I don't know if that's worded correctly, but if you observe that which gives, well, that which you have faith in, then your faith disappears.
Yeah, and faith is actually made as a mechanism of freedom, as in you can't really choose if you know 100% of the outcome, right? You can't
Yeah.
you can't really trust anything if you have evidence all around you. I mean, you can maybe say that the evidence is constructed and that it's not evidence, and it wouldn't be in that case if it was indeed constructed. But if you have 100% evidence, where's the act of freedom of choosing whether you want to trust this or that person? And it's the well, I think it's the main um, point of religion in general, but most Christianity, since I am more related to that branch of religion.
So, okay, so, well, with we have two domains, which is the known, which is our world, what we view as our world. And well, a way you can justify that proposition is that, well, people have always in all times and eras thought that the world was going to end, and that the last generations are doing terrible things, and that the old generations are becoming stupid, and that the middle generation is nothing but corrupt. And I think that the reasons are wrong, but the notion is true. Your world, as you see it, is going to end. And even worse, you are going to end. And so that's the domain of the known. And then we have another leg that we try to place carefully into the realm of the unknown. And I think that's what allows us to choose to listen to the spirit of adventure, let's say, the one that drove Abraham away from his palace. And yeah, I think that the existence of the two different domains, like, right, paradise is known territory, and chaos and hell is unknown. But you can transform the unknown into the known if you dare to venture with what you know into the unknown and bring back that which you uh, find of novelty. Because then you can actually gather knowledge. And this is sort of what we're trying to do here. Because, well, we've ventured into the realm of verbal communication with a potential larger audience, and even to ourselves in the future, which is an even scarier ideal. And we're putting forth our ideas, using what we know to try to get some novelty out of it. And
Like,
so, yeah.
when you phrased it like that, it sounded like material for a Homer novel.
A
Like
Homer novel?
Homer, you know, the one that made the Iliad and all of these ancient books, like Troy. You know about Troy? You
Mm-mm.
know the Iliad, the ones with the Greeks, just discovering more of the Greece with
No,
Achilles and
I don't know. I'm very
oh, so
historically
it's
undereducated.
classical literature. So well, Homer wrote was a writer in ancient Greece that wrote a bunch of novels that are still very popular to our day. Well, Hercules, you know that
Okay.
man.
Yeah, Hercules, I know.
Yes. So Homer wrote a bunch of novels that made its way into Greece mythology as as much as you can think. What? Just imagine Harry Potter becoming a religion of modern society. It sort of became like that. Well, that's another example of views of your present that go way into the future. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I just wanted to point out that that idea of going into hell and recovering what's good from there and coming back, it's a very classical literature um, well theme, I would say.
Yeah, I think it's a mythological, almost archetypical thing, though not an archetype. So, okay, the second question, which is not a question, but because we love to talk so much, it becomes one. Um,
Yeah.
the second point or question is civilization, and this is mentioned as well in the introduction, something like page 6 or 7 of introductory lectures on psychoanalysis by Freud, where he says civilization is created by the pressure of the exigencies of life forcing the human to sacrifice the satisfaction of the instincts for the benefit of the whole community. And so I thought you might have something to say about that.
Yeah, I do recall what you're talking about in the book. And before that, he talks that about the psychoanalytical processes in our brain just being mainly unconscious. So 99% of what you do, you don't even know that you're doing. And only 1% would be part of your consciousness.
That's
And
scary.
and you're actually choosing in those moments.
Everything makes sense now.
Well, I mean, it makes sense that you're just doing things automatically, especially if you're doing something that you're very experienced with or have a lot of talent in. You don't really think about it.
It would be funny to view the Dostoevsky quote through a newer understanding of the processing of the brain, where like he says something more like, "You're responsible for 1% of the things you do, and 1% of what everyone else does."
Yeah. And 99%, 98% of what society does is unconscious.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's even more scary. Yeah, and also, well, in this book, he mainly um, dives into exploring this 99% of unconsciousness that gives you clues about what the 1% is actually doing. Because from the 1% where you're choosing, 0.5%, let's say, is visible to the other people, and the other half you're just keeping for yourself. And it's the 1% that carries on to the 99%. And so, like a criminologist doesn't get the photo of the criminal on the scene and says, "Yeah, I got him. It was easy, everyday job." He just gets clues, and he follows those clues in order to get to the final goal, to catching the criminal. Um, that's why we use this 99% of things that we may think are just automatic or mistakes to lead us as clues into the 1%. And that would be the essence of the human, really. The 1% within the 99.
Yeah. The self within, well, okay, yeah, the finite interacting with the infinite, right?
That's a cooler way of saying it. I wonder why I didn't think of that.
Well, because Jordan Peterson is the one that said it, not me.
Oh, yeah. Well, that explains it.
So, yeah, I mean, that's why we have suffering. But anyways, because it's like, well, if we're infinite, then we won't have interactions, really. There won't be anything to explore.
Yeah, maybe that's a complicated way of explaining it. Let me actually use an example from the author himself in explaining the 99%. He explains it as like sexual interaction in the narrower and the more broader sense. But I mean, that word has a broader meaning.
Yeah.
Maybe like the contact, not only the reproduction. But that's
Romance, yeah.
yeah, it really popped up in my mind. Wait a second. I'm 99% of this. Thought I was 100%, to be honest. But yeah, that's only a cool point to say about this introduction. We do have more. Like, in fact, we were talking about how, well, you made the point, but I was actually going to make the point, so you stole it. So I'll steal it back. And that is that we have an instinctual proclivity towards viewing what we don't like as wrong. So, for example, this author is, well, this book of Introduction into Psychoanalysis is actually based on a lot of lectures that happened between 1917 and 1918, I think it is, or 1915 and 1917. I think it was a 2-year.
1916 and 1917.
Okay. There we go. That was the correct data. And yeah, like at that time, well, when a reader reads this book, he says, "Okay, psychoanalysis, I've heard of it. Sounds cool. Let's explore more." But at the time, it was, um, away from the norm, right? When, like what we said at the beginning, the medics have physical explanations of what happens to the body. They can isolate the chemicals that produce certain illnesses, and they can explore it further in the laboratory. But it's just psychoanalysis seems like black magic to
It's
people.
crazy because they literally viewed looking at the inside of the mind as out of your mind.
Wow, that's uh, mind explaining that a bit more. Like the inside of your mind, that's the outside. So they
No,
thought that if you indulge into the physical realm of, well, your cerebrum, if you start indulging into it like physically, so the maybe the neurons, you start exploring them, that's not part of that's not part of you. That's only the brain. You are something else.
well, no, what I meant to say was that they thought that being inside of your head as a doctor was being out of your mind, as in crazy.
Oh, okay, that was what you meant.
Yeah.
I mean, mind, confusing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, the people in the time didn't really like it. They thought, why invest into psychoanalysis when you're just exploring why I forgot my keys at home? Doesn't
Yeah, it
sound
sounds quite
like,
trivial,
yeah.
but that's because 1% of something is always trivial.
And you can't actually demonstrate it to me. It's just like, yeah, you have to see it for your own. It's
Yeah,
like
and
that.
you can't see it either, he proposes.
Yeah, you can't because you would be interfering, and so you actually wouldn't, even if you were there, you wouldn't see anything.
Yeah, and even worse, he claims that to learn about it, you will have to partake in it. So you can't like decide to learn about it to see if you're going to partake. You have to partake to learn.
Yeah. I mean, that's why therapy sessions are part of a failed society, in my opinion. How can you get anything about, like, a marital relationship when the people are clearly having some issues between them?
Difficulties in getting a good doctor or, well, psychologist, for sure. So, yeah, no, so, okay, well, we have an instinctual proclivity towards viewing what we don't like as wrong. So the reason they don't like it is because it tells them that they're wrong. And so I think, well, things we don't like as wrong. Well, the reason we don't like things and we label them wrong is because most things that we can't disprove that are that we don't like are things that force us, if we were to accept them, to change something fundamental about our perspective on the world. And that changes what we think we know as known into chaos. Then we have to go out into the chaos to go get it back and put it in the right spot in the right way. And that's a scary adventure for some. So so yeah, that's why most people would rather be the slaves of Pharaoh, because that is known, than to venture out into the desert for 6 generations, probably die, and then as a result of that potentially individualistically meaningless journey, some paradise might happen in the future. And that's called aiming up and towards the good. So but the last one, so we didn't cover the second point really that much in detail. I'll leave this one to you, which is that civilization is created by the pressure of the exigencies of life. So the exigencies is like the urgencies, the needs,
Yeah.
forcing the human to sacrifice the satisfaction of the instincts for the benefit of the whole community. Now, my first thought here was something like, well, the instinct is like your hedonistic wants right now, and the benefit of the whole community, well, that takes a lot of time, so that's the future. And the pressure of the exigencies of life, right? So life and the pressure and the force on that is something like your now, or the eternal, what pre-exists you. So maybe it's the past, if you were to view it like that.
And this was a more prevalent notion in past societies than it is now. Well, just recalling about the kings and their liege, they were thinking about doing great things to be remembered into, well, like eternity, like Julius Caesar conquering all of Europe and North Africa, just for his name to be remembered to our day.
Yeah.
The reason why I put him as an example. And well, in modern society, I think it has to. Well, it still happens, but it's not as top of a priority as it was before, in my opinion. Even though we are as individualistic as we've ever been, we don't want to conquer all of Europe again. Someone tried it. And people didn't remember him for his great deeds, precisely.
No.
Not really. Yeah, but I think, going back to the book, the author explains this very easily if you take the example that I put. So you just refrain your sexual instincts for the benefit of the whole community, and that builds society. Well,
so the sacrifice of your
if your instant
present for the
needs, yeah,
future good.
like no matter your own highs or lows, you explained it as hedonistic, but it would be equally valid if you said nihilistic.
Nihilistic, yeah.
Nihilistic, yeah.
I'm thinking about this as like, well, okay, so if we think of that in the light of the first part of the Dostoevsky quote, where he basically references Jesus in the on taking, or the taking on of all man's sins for yourself being the one and only road to salvation, I think, well, there's an even more honorable thing in doing that, what Jesus did, let's say. Because not only are you sacrificing your present for your future and other people's future, no, you're sacrificing your future, the meaning of your actions in the past, and your present for everyone else's future. And I think that's why sacrifice is such a huge thing in the Bible, let's say, and even like all religious books that are within monotheism. It's like, and even polytheistic older gods, there's a bunch of sacrifices, and that's like, well, when I do something difficult and venture into the dark, and I give up something, I evolve because I have to adapt. So I think in its most extreme form, that's something like human sacrifice.
Yeah, I mean, he would be the pinnacle of this principle of how civilization is built. And that's the reason why he marks the division between before Christ and after death.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just that big of a civilization building, like event or
Yeah,
deed.
I think that's a good place to end it. Really, we've covered all our points, and if we go any further, I think we won't cover any more of the book.
Yep, but we've still gotten a lot of other authors into this. So
Absolutely.
I think we're reading 5 books simultaneously.
Yeah.
So we're reading Dostoevsky,
The Bible.
yeah, the Bible, as I was gonna say, just lectures on psychoanalysis, uh, Homer, not Simpson, but from the Iliad.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson.
Jordan Peterson.
You know, I definitely learned something today. That's for sure.
What is it?
What I learned.
Yeah.
Well, I'm currently in the process of taking it from the realm of chaos into the realm of the known, but I'd say that the ideas are clearer and my perspective is tilted, though I don't know what direction yet. I'm less left with this feeling that you have after a movie of like, oh, there's something there. And I think that's because, well, all the intricacies haven't yet
Yeah.
put themselves in place.
And you wonder if there will be a sequel to the movie to see if
Yeah.
there's more about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just tilting your own beliefs as tilted at this Tour Eiffel is tilted towards the lady.
To
Something
my
went wrong.
side.
Yeah. So yeah,
All right.
that's a
Yeah,
good
no.
place to end. I
Mm-hmm.
I hope this was food for thoughts for everyone, and that mainly us got something out of
Yeah.
all of this.
Hello, future weirdos.
Hello, me, 5 years into the future.
Oh God, 27.
Yeah,
Is that
no,
even legal?
nah, I'm dead.
All right.
Yes, hopefully see you again.
Yeah. See ya.